When I first started on this build, I mentioned to you guys that my buddy Oliver, who you might have seen in an earlier 3D printing video where I printed his full Ariel Atom model kit, has also created a set for the Pagani Zonda with some new wheels, tires, some spoilers, and other upgrades. And I was wondering if you guys wanted to see that. I personally like the design of these wheels a lot more than the ones that came with the kit, so I decided simply just to upgrade the wheels and leave the spoiler and the other bits for what they were. The resin I will be using is from Everyone 3D. I will be leaving links in the description down below. I simply just used their gray ABS-like resin. They have multiple different colors available, and it is a pretty tough resin. It works really well, and I had simply no problems whatsoever. So if you're interested, the links are in the description down below. So the files were downloaded, the resin was loaded into my Anycubic Photon Mono, and I simply went over the settings just one more time to be sure that they were right, and I didn't really change all that much. The layer height is 0.01, 6 bottom layers, and an exposure time of 1.5 seconds per layer. The rest is pretty much untouched. After about 5 hours, the wheels and tires were fully printed. I simply just needed to clean them up a bit, remove the so-called sprues or supports, sand those down, and then sand the entire part a little bit before I moved it into the spray booth itself. As you can see on the tire itself and the wheel, all of the small tiny details have been captured perfectly. The resin did a really good job, and the same goes for the printer as well. For priming the 3D printed parts, since they are resin, I'm using the specific primer from Tamiya. This is suitable for metal, plastic, and also resin. Sticks really well and doesn't react to the material at all. So I really recommend this primer. In this case, I'm just using the liquid surface primer. It is the same stuff as in the spray cans, but then in a smaller bottle, and you simply just needed to thin it down a little bit. So after applying some primer to all of the various parts, letting that cure for a bit, I moved on to painting the tires in a flat black and the wheels in a gloss black, later to be painted in a silver, sort of chrome-ish metal-like finish. If you've watched the video on the engine assembly for this kit, then you might have noticed this paint used before. This is done for a couple of the suspension components and some of the engine parts as well. So same goes of course for the front. Some of the suspension components on the main chassis piece and the other pieces were painted in this gold, then carefully masked off. After painting some silver, I again masked it off, so then I could paint the flat black on the main chassis. The flat black that was used on the chassis here was an older bottle with a bit of dirt in it, so it couldn't really be used for any of the visible parts, but instead of throwing it out, I figured I'd just use it on the chassis, as that will be hidden most of the time. In any case, that was done. I could then move on to unmasking all of the parts and revealing the silver and also gold parts. I went through a couple rounds of painting, masking, and then painting again until I was satisfied with all of the parts and could then simply move on to the assembly. Everything you see has been glued together with Bob Smith Industries Super Gold Plus. couldn't fully finalize the installation of the front suspension without putting this cowl piece in and then also adding the radiator in the front. However, this part needs to be installed a bit later after the main bodywork has been put on, so this is simply just a dry fit to see how the entire chassis would look all assembled. Just like I did on the rear suspension and the engine, I did decide to weather it a little bit. Now, I'm not going overboard, I'm just going for some extra depth and a bit of shading just to make it look a bit more realistic and not specifically go for a dirty look. So the inside of the spring is coated with this Panelline accent color, and the same goes for the brake disc itself, just to highlight those small divots in there with a bit of black just to make them show up a little more and give them a bit more of a realistic look. After letting that dry for a little bit, I could simply install the wheels and call the chassis finished. Now, as I said, some of these front components will be taken off later to install some of the exterior bodywork, but for now, this is just an overview of what I've completed in this section of the build. Next up, I will be adding a lot more carbon fiber to the exterior and hopefully finishing this build pretty soon.